What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about this Resident Evil 5 drama. Oh man, this is one of my favorite things to talk about, right? So IGN really sets the internet, I'd say, on fire, right? They issue this tweet. They talk about the Resident Evil 5 remake, and honestly, at first glance, it kind of comes across just as like a farming-like tweet. You know what I mean? They throw it out there. They disable comments, which we're definitely going to talk about, right? And that was a really bad part of this entire, saga. But you would look at it and say, well, this is kind of like rage farming. You know what I mean? They just put this together. A random intern, tweeted this hot take out. But you know what? I got to say, I read the article. Now, I don't agree with it, okay? I really think, in a way, they were rage farming it. The whole race thing, which we'll talk about again as this video goes on, I think a lot of it is just flat out stupid, right? But you know what? The article is actually pretty lengthy, I would say, for like IGN standards. It's more of like an editorial, right? Like they do go over things beyond race, right? The article does talk about the mechanics. It's almost a summary more for the entire game than it is a pitch to completely, like redo it instead of just like a remake, right? Like to kind of start over and retool everything. So, it's a little bit more than just your rage-inducing like Kotaku tweet, right? They put no effort into anything, but it is, I think, a really bad take, and overwhelmingly, I don't agree. And here's what I'll say, okay? Now, actually, we have talked about this when we talked about like Resident Evil 4's remake, and maybe even before then. Look, eventually they were going to get to the point where they're going to, well, they don't have to. They don't have to do anything, but Capcom obviously is going down the remake route, right? And it's very clear that eventually they would have gotten to 5. And 5 is a very polarizing game, not because of this fake racism stuff, but it's just, some people like it, some people hate it. Now, I've actually always been on the side, and I can tell you stories going back to my childhood. I won't get too deep into it, but I honestly liked 5. 5 was one of the first Resident Evil games I truly, really played, and then I kind of went backwards. But I've always respected 5, and I think 5, yeah, is it Resident Evil? That's really where they took the action, right? And they took any of the action-y things in 4, and they just went like full, 100% throttle on it. Again, is it everybody's game? No. Do people, genuinely not like it? Absolutely, and I totally respect that. But for me, I've honestly always had a soft spot for it. I think we've all, again, known that eventually, like, you're gonna have to. I mean it as in, like, that's just their plan, right? They're going through them all. You're gonna have to remake 5. You're gonna have to remake 6. And, like, those games are now, I never really liked 6. 6 is the one that I'll try it again, certainly over this next couple year stretch, but the first and only time I played 6, I didn't really like it. But you knew 5 was coming. So, well, what does IGN say? Well, again, to give them just a tad bit of credit, the article itself does go over more stuff. In terms of the AI and some of the kind of more mechanics and some of the shortcomings, and look, 5 is not a perfect game. It really isn't. But it really, just talking about that, element to it. For me, look, when you remake a game, you're remaking it. You're not changing everything about it. Now, yeah, there's a little bit of liberty, and we've seen remakes do like straight up, just like they take everything and they just, again, make it look good, right? Like up the mechanics. We've seen some games add some stuff. Honestly, even the most recent example for Resident Evil 4 changed some stuff, and nobody really had a problem, right? So I'm not saying you have to keep it literally every single frame, every single mechanic, the AI movement, anything that has to do with, how this game runs and operates has to be the exact same. No, there's always been a little bit of room to mess around. And you even look at the Dead Space remake. They took a big risk in giving Isaac a voice, for the first game. Making him be able to talk really radically, changes that first Dead Space. Now, for me, I loved it. I think the Dead Space remake is really good. I have seen, not everybody likes the remake. I think that's fine, but I honestly think that was a fine choice and ended up actually working out, even though I was kind of worried for it. So I guess why am I, harping on this so much? It's to say that I think IGN is dumb for this take, mainly because of that racism part. But there are some parts where it's like, yes, is this a perfect game? No. And should some of it be kind of changed or reworked? Like, there's room for that, you know what I mean? That's not their main point. I don't think that's what they were trying to say. I think a lot of this stuff was trying to be worked in just to make the excuse of, okay, let's talk about that racism, right? Because, okay, it's got a good solid, like, paragraph and a half in their article. You can kind of tell that they were building up to it, right? Because they talk about the mechanics and they're like, a lot of the media, and I'm actually doing this, like I've already read it, but I'm not like looking at it, in the moment. But they're like, there's been a lot of media discourse about the racism in Resident Evil 5, and it's like, well, to be honest, I guess that's kind of right, because the only people that talk about it are the people in the media, right? Like only the IGNs of the world have talked about it. You don't really see anybody else. You don't see YouTube essays, right? Even if they're talking about Resident Evil 5, you don't see them talking about perceived racism, right? They're talking about the game, whether it's good or bad, whether they hate the game or love the game, they're talking about it. Nobody's really bringing that up. So they are half correct that it's only the media that really cares or thinks it's an issue. And people are, and here's the thing, right? The crux of this, they're cowards. They hide from it. They put out this hot take, and it's like, you know what? It's a hot take. I think they're wrong. I think that's a bad way of looking at it. I don't think there's racism in 5, but you put it out there, and it's like, you know what? Own up to it. Maybe you're right. No, I don't think they are, but right, maybe you could be right. Well, own up to it. They disabled comments immediately. You couldn't say a thing, so it's only quote tweets, right? The tweet's getting destroyed. Now, IGN actually, I believe, made a video on it, too, to kind of double down, but the idea that you hide away from it when you knew what was coming, and again, you could have stood tall and say, no, this is what we believe, this is what we think, we're sticking with it. Why didn't you do that? It's because that part, I think, was more of the rage thing, right? They knew people would come at them, and so they weren't even going to try to defend their viewpoint. And why? I think it's actually because it's not their viewpoint. I don't know if they actually believe it, and if they do, they probably know that the viewpoint's on like very thin ice, right? Because again, what you're seeing with these ratios, what you're seeing with these quote tweets, people making great points. Like there's different, you go to different places in every Resident Evil game. I mean, people are talking about Resident Evil 6, with like Asians, right? And you're killing Asian zombies left and right. You're killing all sorts of different, ethnic groups in every Resident Evil game. You're eliminating, let's use proper YouTube terms here, you're eliminating a lot of, people from specific races because they're zombies, you know what I mean? And there's not a problem with it. It's only this game because of the race, right? It's manufactured. So, and the way they try to describe it in the article, I mean, again, it's flat out dumb with, oh, you're not like stealing their land, but you're stealing their resources and then using it to take them out. You mean going in a linear level, farming thing, like just, picking up an item, turning around, crafting with that item, and using it to shoot a zombie. You're taking that mechanic of picking up ammo here or this crafting material here, creating something, and then turning around and shooting a zombie in the face. You're saying that because of the race of the zombie, that's going to be a big issue because of the race. Like, you know what I mean? And that's the crux of that entire racism argument, and it's not, again, it's not right. You could stand by it, you know what I mean? Like, if you really want to, but you're going to have to contest with the fact that every other game also did it. It was just with different races. So if you want to claim racism, then you got to do it for each game, right? And nobody's doing that. You're not looking to Resident Evil 6. The Resident Evil 4 game that just came out, that could be racist depending on how you look at it. You know what I mean? If you're looking at it through IGN's lens. But of course, no, it's only because it's one race, right? And as people are pointing out, it's always funny because that community doesn't have a problem with, you know what I mean? Like, and I can't say I'm speaking for them, but what I have seen online, at least, I would say very loudly because of this IGN issue, they're not mad. Nobody's ever been mad at it, right? The only people that are mad are these media, and normally they don't even represent the race that they're saying are mad about it. You know what I mean? They're making it up. So it's hilarious. It is, I want to talk about entertainment purposes. You know what I mean? It's fun to do this, but I'm honestly pretty happy. Like, to end this video, I'm happy with the response. Like, people have, I think, in the rights, just taken it to IGN and say, the biggest thing is the hiding from it. I really think if they didn't hide from it, it would still be bad because that hot take and that wrong hot take, I believe, has been around for a while. The biggest part to it could be that they hid away from it and they disabled the comments, right? So they didn't even want any part to it. So I don't know. Like, I think they're getting the proper backlash. I think people are standing up for, and people are standing up for Resident Evil 5, and guess what? It's not even a perfect game. I don't think it's the best Resident Evil. I've just always liked it. That doesn't mean I think it's the best one. It has issues, and I do expect some of those things to maybe be changed in a remake. Like, I think they're going to try their best to make the best version of 5 that they can make. But to expect it to be completely redone is ridiculous. They're not going to do that, right? When have they and why would you want that? That's not remaking it. Well, I guess it depends. Like if you do like Final Fantasy remake and it's kind of meta where they know they're remaking it, I suppose you can get away with completely changing things, but not the way they've done it. You know what I mean? They're set in stone of how they do these remakes. They're not completely changing it from the ground up. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.